Hello, Academy parents. My name is Matt Callahan. I'm the Oshkosh United Academy Director and the Club Director of Coaching. And today I'm just reaching out with a brief Academy parent meeting so we can touch base and make sure we're on the same page about some of the key elements of our program. So the agenda for today, we'll talk about our program goals. We'll talk about the U8 program. We'll talk about the U10 program. We'll talk about game days and what that should look like. We'll go over some COVID safety info, and then we'll give some avenue for you to reach out if you have any questions. So first off, with the program, our Academy program is meant to be a bridge between recreational and competitive soccer. It has some elements of both. For example, there's no tryouts. Anyone can sign up and play. So that would be closer to a rec program. But then we do have players placed onto teams by skill level so they can face an appropriate competition in the league. And there's some travel to play other local teams. So that's more like the select program. One of our key goals, though, for the Academy is we want to make sure that the players are having an enjoyable experience. A huge percentage of kids quit youth sports by the time they're 13. So we want to make sure that the players are having an enjoyable experience so they can continue to play soccer if they so choose. We have developed a curriculum for U8 and a separate curriculum for U10. We provide that to our coaches to give them guidance on what should be worked on at the different practices throughout the season. And we also have that to provide consistency when we have multiple teams at the same age group. That curriculum is based upon information that our coaches have received from USU soccer and US soccer on what is appropriate to teach at the different ages. So again, that's one of the cornerstones of our program is having that developmentally appropriate training. US soccer, USU soccer, they've looked at what can kids do physically, cognitively, socially, and then they have based the youth soccer game and a model youth soccer practice around those different concepts. And as a club in general, we focus hugely on player development as opposed to winning. So to give some examples of that, we'll have all of the players will get equal playing time. We will have players play different positions. And just in general, we'll try to teach them to play soccer as opposed to focusing on winning at all costs. It's our belief, and we've seen this play out over the years as we've done this, is that by focusing on player development at the younger ages, the players become very skillful, they become great soccer players, and then winning becomes natural later on down the road. I'll give some examples, though, of what that might look like here shortly. So talking about the U8 program, our U8s play 4 against 4 on a field that's about 20 by 30 yards. They won't have any goalkeepers. There won't be any referees. The coaches will call the fouls. The U8 players will play 4 10-minute quarters. And there's going to be a build-out line. And what that means is when one team gets a goal kick, the other team has to drop back behind the half line. And the purpose of that is rather than encouraging players to just boot the ball down the field, they want the players to try to get a pass or two in before they're pressured by the other team. So they're trying to encourage them to build out of the back through passing as opposed to just whacking the ball down the field. So again, that's an example of trying to promote development over winning. If we just wanted to win games, we'd kick the ball as far as we could and see if someone could outrun it and score a goal. But instead, we want the players to try to pass and dribble and use skill. So we focus on development over winning. So that's what the build outline is. Anytime a team has a goal kick, the other team will have to drop behind the half line. And then as soon as that team passes the ball to someone else, then they can step up and pressure. When the ball goes out of bounds on the side of the field, it can be a kick in or a throw in, depending upon the preference. At our U8 program, the players primarily are going to focus on dribbling. It's going to be a lot of activities where every player has their own ball. They're getting a ton of touches on the ball and becoming proficient at dribbling. They will have some activities that introduce passing. At this age, most kids, when they do start to pass, they'll choose to pass to their best bud as opposed to someone that's actually open and in a good position. We still encourage that anyway, just to get them used to passing. But players are going to be all over the spectrum, plus or minus 3 years on where they're at. A player might chronologically be 8, but socially they might be 5, physically they might be 10. And so some players are going to develop obviously at different rates, and players that develop a little bit earlier might be more willing to pass the ball. But again, we'll just meet the kids where they're at and try to make sure they have a good experience. Bunching is a great thing at U8 soccer. Sometimes I hear parents yelling, spread out, spread out, spread out. That's probably like asking a 6-year-old to have a sucker in their hand and to not eat it. Kids think of the soccer ball as a toy and they want to go play with it. So psychologically, it is normal and expected that the kids are going to congregate towards the ball. So I always joke that's a good thing. I'm far more worried about the dandelion pickers than I am about the kids congregated around the ball. So if that happens, that's a good thing. When the ball goes out of bounds, we might remind them to, find your diamond or kite shape. We might remind them to spread out a little bit, but it's perfectly normal during a game for the kids to just get into a big huddle or a bunch or whatever you want to call it. So we'll just go with that. As the kids get older and they get smarter, then they'll start to see the benefit of spreading out and the benefit of passing the ball, and then those things will become much more common. So it's just a matter of waiting for that process to play through, and then the players, when it's developmentally appropriate, they'll begin to spread out and pass the ball. And as I mentioned, our shape, we don't have positions if it's only 4 against 4. Sometimes we might designate a player more as a defender and the other 3 as attackers. But for the most part, it's all about shape. Can you make a diamond or a kite when we are playing at U8? Now at U10, they play 7 against 7. That's 6 field players and a goalkeeper. U10, we will have referees being used. And in all honesty, parents, most of the referees at an academy game, this might be their first experience being a referee. Not always, but often. So we want to make sure we treat those referees with respect. Just as our players are learning how to play the game, the referees are learning how to referee the game as well. Our league sets up different opportunities where referees, young referees, will referee a game, and we'll have experienced referees on hand as well. And they'll mentor those young referees and give them advice and tips on how they can do a better job of being a referee. So please be understanding of our young referees as they're trying to learn how to do their job as well. U10 players will play 2 25-minute halves, and they'll also have a build-out line. At U10, the build-out line will be striped, or typically striped. Sometimes it's a solid line in between the half line and then where the penalty box is on the field, the large box around the goal. And just like at U8, when there's a goal kick, or new to U10, if the goalkeeper makes a save and they get the ball, then the other team needs to drop behind that build-out line. And then as soon as the goalkeeper releases the ball into play, then the other team can step up and pressure. And again, the whole purpose of that is to try to get players used to passing and dribbling and building out of the back, as opposed to just whacking the ball down the field and trying to outrun someone and score a goal. It's a measure to focus on player development as opposed to winning. Also, to push those goals, punting is not allowed in our league at U10. When a goalkeeper gets the ball, they can either roll it to a teammate, or they could throw it to a teammate, or they could put it on the ground and pass it to a teammate, but they can't punt the ball. Heading is not allowed at U10, and so they don't want the ball up in the air. That's one reason. And again, they don't want teams just whacking the ball down the field. At U10, our curriculum begins to focus a bit more on passing. There will still be a lot of dribbling, but we'll have passing with other themed activities during practice, such as shooting and receiving as well. U10 is a very important age. U10 to U14 is the golden age of motor learning. That's when players are most capable of learning how to do new skills. So we'll focus heavily on skill development through these next couple years. We focus very little on the tactics or how to play the game. Players can learn that stuff easily when they're older, but it's difficult to teach a player how to do a skill if they've been doing it incorrectly for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So these younger ages, U8, U10, U11, U12, U13, we focus heavily on skill development of a player's technical ability. We do as little as possible to teach them how to play the game. That comes naturally when the players get a little bit older. U10, we do introduce players to positions. If we have 6 field players, sometimes we might have 3 defenders and 3 attackers. So there'd be a left defender, center defender, right defender, and so on for the attackers. So we start to introduce players to playing a position. Again, for focusing on player development, we still have the players play equal playing time, and we have them play different positions, so that way they get a broad understanding of how to play soccer. I'll touch real briefly here about learning during games. This is always a huge push that we have at Oshkosh United, is to let the players make the decisions. Often I see parents and sometimes coaches, they're afraid to let the players make mistakes. Making mistakes is part of learning. But what this looks like during a soccer game is having someone, what I call, or what a lot of people call, joysticking, where they're yelling out every direction of what they want the player to do. You know, Billy, pass it to Johnny. Johnny, kick it up. Cross it. Shoot, shoot, shoot. When coaches or parents do that, they're the ones making the decisions and not the players. As the players get older and they're playing 11 against 11 on a 120-yard long by 75-yard wide field, and every player on the field is moving at once, it's impossible for one person to tell all of those players what they're supposed to be doing all the time. So it's critical for a player's development that they learn how to make the decisions. So during a game, we want our coaches observing play, watching what's going on, and then they'll take those things. They might talk to players when they come off the field. They might occasionally talk to players if the ball's out of bounds and it's not rolling. Then they can just focus in on the coach's direction, and they're not trying to listen to something as the play is going on. That's super difficult for players to do. They might talk to the players at halftime, and certainly they'll take what's happening during the game and they can try to address it at practice. But from a coaching standpoint, from a parent standpoint, please don't yell anything that's a direction that you want a player to do during a game. Let the players try to make those decisions. If they make a mistake, hey, that's okay. That's all part of the learning process. Let's let the coaches give some feedback, and then they'll address a lot of issues in practice. Certainly, again, feel free to cheer, be positive. You can cheer for things that both teams do, whatever. Just try to avoid coaching or giving direction at all costs. And as I touched upon earlier, our referees at this age are going to be very young. They're going to be learning how to play as well. So again, yelling and heckling referees is not part of the experience. Please be respectful for the referees so they can continue to develop as a referee, so we have a larger referee pool as our players get older. Real briefly here, touching on our safety plan. The safety plan at this point, it's going to vary by the location. Wisconsin Youth Soccer has released protocols that we follow, and then we also will have protocols that will follow based upon where our venue is taking place. So when we're at Tipler, we're on Oshkosh Area School District property, so then we'll have to follow Oshkosh Area School District protocols. When we have our tournament in about a month, we'll be at Winnebago County Park. We'll have to follow Winnebago County Park protocols. So essentially each week before we play games, we will send out some information on what the protocols will be of wherever we're going. Key things, though, we want to try to have the players spread out whenever they're not playing. If they're on a bench, we want them, if they're not playing, we don't want them on a bench. We want them to be at least 6 feet apart. So that way, they're not having close contact when they're not participating in a game. In regards to masks, when we're at Tippler at this point, masks are still required. They're required for coaches at all times at Tippler. And when we do host athletic events, games at Tippler, they'll be required for all spectators as well. When we are at another venue, Wisconsin Youth Soccer has recently updated their guidance. So they are encouraging masks for coaches and encouraging masks for spectators, but not requiring them. They did place a special emphasis on if an individual isn't vaccinated, then they really should be wearing a mask. It's still early in the season, so as the season goes on, if those protocols get updated, certainly we'll reach out and communicate that information. In terms of spectators, our approved safety plan through the Oshkosh Area School District is to have 2 spectators per player. Wisconsin Youth Soccer has updated their protocol to just say limit spectators to as few as possible. So most away venues, unless they have more strict protocols by the location of the venue, most away venues will just have a limit on spectators, but not a specific number. If at any point throughout the season you do have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email academy@oshkoshunited.com. That's a group email address. It will go to myself, and it will go to our program administrator, Jenny Ostertag. And then depending on what type of question it is and who would answer, whether it be Jenny or I, we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you very much for tuning in. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And I'm looking forward to seeing you as a parent and the players out there in the field having some fun. Thanks, and have a great day.